Firstly, welcome to today's presentation, Supporting BIM Compliance in 2016. What we're going to talk about in the next, hopefully 20 minutes, is what is BIM, what it's all about, how do you as an individual and an organisation engage with BIM. Earlier this year we ran a focus group, a BIM focus group, and we want to sort of report back some of the findings from that. And also, probably the most important thing, how do you start preparing for BIM and BIM compliance? As most of you probably know, the word Building Information Modelling, BIM, stands for Building Information Modelling, but the building element of it is being misconstrued very much towards architectural, because most of the examples you see are architectural. So there's an assumption that Building Information Modelling means the building itself. In reality, it's anything that we build, the verb to build. So we build roads, we build landscapes, we build bridges. So that building process, and basically anything that we do in the construction industry is a building activity, and in the manufacturing, etc. So it actually covers a whole range of elements when you start talking about BIM in the broadest sense. The one thing it isn't is quite clear. It's not software. You can't go out and buy BIM in a box. People say, you know, what software do I need to buy to become BIM compliant? There isn't a single piece of software that delivers that. If there was, everybody would be buying it tomorrow, and it can't, because it's a process. Just like you can't go and buy engineering as a product, you can't buy architecture as a piece of software, and you can't buy landscape as a piece of software, because it's a process. The software assists you in that process, but fundamentally it is still a process. What is BIM then? BIM is effectively a strategic approach to design. It's looking at the whole life cycle management of a project, from inception through to feasibility, design, construction, and then into operations management. And the biggest part of any project and the biggest cost of any project is the ongoing maintenance and redesign and redevelopment of an asset, whether that's a road, a landscape, or whatever. The construction phase could be 12 months, 2 years, but that feature is in the landscape for 10, 20, 30, 40, several hundred years. Look at the M1. The M1 actually construction costs compared to ongoing maintenance, and the operations of that is significantly more. So what we start to look at is the whole aspect of design, not just the build process, but also how we can make better decisions in the whole life cycle of the project, including almost as well the deconstruction of that project. So it's really that cradle to grave process. Most of what we're talking about today is actually summarised as a fairly old document now, but it's the BS 1192 2007. You have to pay for that. There's a lot of supporting documents that sort of help you in the BIM process, and that's all about fundamentally collaboration, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about BIM. It's better collaboration throughout the whole process. And it's worth just starting off with a very, very brief definition of what the BIM task group, who defined what BIM means back in the early days, and they say it's this definition here. If I actually highlight a few elements within there, I think it helps pick out what we're talking about. Firstly, it's virtual digital design. So you are talking about a digital environment. Yes, you could work with drawings and PDFs, but fundamentally you're talking about a CAD as a minimum to start with. It talks about a 3D model. Not every project, and I'll talk on this a little bit further, not every project you do will require a 3D model. If you're doing a small junction design or a small courtyard, it may or may not benefit from having a 3D model. If it does benefit from a 3D model for interpretation, for design purposes, and for clash detection, then the 3D model is relevant. If it doesn't add value, there isn't always a need to invest in that as part of the project. What it needs to be, though, is data rich. Fundamentally, you've got to make sure that information you're passing to partners and receive from partners and all collectively passed back to the client has information that people can use. If they haven't got that information, they can't start making decisions. And if you have got information that you can sort of put together in a meaningful way, they can start looking at different options and start answering questions. The what if I do X over what if I do Y? Or what if I choose this product in terms of construction and ongoing maintenance compared to this product in terms of construction and ongoing maintenance. It may well be you go for a slightly more expensive solution at the outset, so on the overall management of the asset, that actually works out more cost effective. We're also talking about, as we mentioned, the project life cycle, the asset life cycle. So it's from the actual inception through to operations. It's the whole life cycle of the project, not just the construction phase. But it's all done in a collaborative environment. So it's making sure that you can move data, receive data easily and transparently within that design process. When we look at most of that, you probably say, well, don't we do that at the moment? And the reality is you do. And that's one of the things we need to get over, that BIM isn't something new. It isn't a new invention. In fact, the first wording of BIM was back in the 1970s, 1980s. So it's not a concept that's new. And the whole aspect of collaboration goes back even further than that. So we're looking at really just homing our processes, looking at what we're doing and probably trying to do it better. When we start talking about BIM, I mentioned about BS 1192. There's a lot of supporting documents now. All of these are freely available that are sort of collected together, form what I've often referred to as the 7 pillars of BIM. These are your standards, your processes, your protocols that you probably need to understand and get a sort of hold on before you start implementing a BIM project. The PAS are public available specifications. They're freely available. You can download those from any of the main websites. There is a new PAS, PAS 1192.5, which talks about security of data. And that will probably be added to these pillars of BIM, so it will become the 8 pillars of BIM in a short while. The Building Information Modelling Protocol talks about the standards and the systems and, in place. The Government Soft Landings actually starts talking to you about, rather than designing and then passing on to the operations management team, having a process of a strategy of handover. So getting the operations managers, facilities managers engaged earlier in the design process, enabling them to start contributing to the design and construction phase. So you're actually making good decisions that support and help them, but also a handover period. So rather than just saying, here you are, Mr. Client, here's the project, actually having a strategy whereby the design team work closely over a period of time with the facilities managers to make sure that handover process is a seamless phase. The Digital Plan of Works has just recently been launched. It's in beta format at the moment, so please go and try it. Feedback is most welcome. This has been put together funded by the government, but it's a NBS BIM toolkit is what's been sort of delivered to the market, and that gives you a staged approach to how you can build a BIM project. And for each stage of the project, from 0 through to step 7, so when you start doing your feasibility, etc., design, construction, it gives you indications and allows you to set up the roles and responsibilities, which is effectively your project management, and also what level of detail is required at each phase of the project. Because obviously early in the project, you will need less design information, but more information. As you move through the process, you need to add more design information, more clarity about how things work and fit together, but also more information as well. So it sets out at each level of the project what information is required, who's responsible for delivering that, and what their roles and responsibilities are. The other aspect of that is the classification of all these objects. So they're trying to find a way of classifying every single feature within a construction process. Not a sort of an easy task really, and it's in preparation at the moment. So the classification systems will start coming through, and it will be an ongoing process because we're never going to be able to define at dot at day one the actual every single product that's available now. It's a process that will define over time. Why is the whole thing important? It came about because in 2011 the government issued effectively a strategy document to say that what they wanted to do was uplift the whole of the construction industry and provide a level of excellence in the construction industry that could be demonstrated and will actually fundamentally provide a brand UK that can go abroad and sell export to other countries in the form of construction, etc. And they define this as BIM, and they set a target of level 2. And that's saying that basically any project the is sort of funding, you could argue that's any government project that is come from central government or through local government, because that's funded by a central government, has to demonstrate a level 2 BIM process. So that's where the initiative came from. Behind all that, though, there were some key objectives. So what they're fundamentally trying to do is iron out a lot of the problems, and by ironing out a lot of the problems in the virtual world, you then reduce those implications on the construction process. So what it would do is actually reduce the capital costs, and the estimation and hope and expectation is that it will be a sort of 20% reduction in the capital cost of a project, and also now, because we can do a lot of what-ifs and checks and things, to actually start looking at reducing the carbon burden of a project, but not just in the actual delivery, over the whole life cycle of a project. And we do that by having better informed decisions, because if we've got better informed decisions, we can then start looking at, in the virtual world, the ability to reduce errors. Errors on site cause delays, cause additional costs. That impacts on the project delivery and the project budget. I read somewhere that the average cost of any sort of modification on site is about £3,000. So every change request on site, whether that's because of a design fault or sort of a process or a delivery mechanism whereby the machinery is on site at the wrong time, etc., all of those can actually affect the outcome of the project in terms of estimated £3,000 an issue, but also impacts on the time and the delivery. So what we're trying to do is actually improve on that and reduce further the costs of decision making, because if we know what we're doing better early in the process, further down the design chain, we can actually make better decisions because we've got better, more accurate information to make those decisions from, trying to avoid the situation where you have mistakes happen on site which are quite costly. This is a variation on what the BIM levels are. I think most of you would have seen sort of a often referred to as the BIM wedge, and often feel that you feel like you're pushing something up a hill with a BIM wedge. So we've adapted this really for a timeline. I think most of us really are beyond level 0. I think hopefully most of you are beyond level 0, which is basically a whole range of mishmash of paper copies, digital copies that aren't at a scale, aren't in any particular format, and we just put it together and make the best of it as where we are. Most of us are probably working at the moment at level 1, where we've got CAD models in 2D, in some cases other CAD models in 3D. They could be in a different application, so you could be working in AutoCAD and SketchUp. And these are pulled together with other design partners and other information, supporting information, sort of maintenance, development, protocols, etc., into a project which we can then deliver to the client. Where we're trying to move people towards is having a system whereby you're actually exchanging data more freely, you're all working from a common base and a common scale and in a common format, so you can share data easily. You're working with user guides, which is again is your maintenance, your protocols, etc., and you're working to certain standards within the project team that makes it easier for everybody in the team to exchange information. Everybody's still working in their own little environment, and often you'll be putting that together into what's referred to commonly as a federated model, the combined model. Now that can be in things like Vectorworks, or it could be in AutoCAD, it could be in applications such as the BIM toolkits that are out there at the moment. Celebre is one of them. Navisworks from Autodesk is another one. And these are high-end applications which allow you to pull multiple objects together to do the clash avoidance and clash detection. So that's what we're trying to work to by the end of this year. Level 3 is fundamentally undefined at the moment in terms of not only what's required and also the deadlines, but the government have put out a consultation document a couple of weeks ago talking about digital Britain and virtual cities and digital cities, and how that might actually materialise in the form of a collaborative way of working within a single model, which could be sitting somewhere in the cloud. But as I say, that's not being defined just yet. Where we are at the moment, obviously, as I mentioned, there's a government push towards BIM Level 2 maturity by 2016, because there's a benefit in there in delivering 20% reduction in costs, better facilities management over the lifetime of the project. Now, obviously, because that benefit is a deliverable of BIM, what's happening increasingly is the private sector and architects, contractors particularly, are understanding that, well, actually, if we can make a benefit from BIM and we can save 20% in our construction and whole process costs, why do we want to wait to 2016 to implement that? We want to do it now. So what's been happening over the last 16 months, 12 months or so, is that there's been a drive from the private sector, and particularly as say contractors, to start implementing BIM now to realise those benefits before the 2015-16 deadline. So let's get down to what fundamentally defines BIM Level 2. I mentioned about the 7 pillars of BIM. Those are the documents that support the standards that go behind that. But fundamentally, we're talking about 2D CAD drawings as a minimum, and refer to managed 3D. As I mentioned earlier, not every project you do will benefit from a 3D model. If it does benefit from the 3D model, then it's worth doing. And even if you are working with a 3D model, it doesn't have to be in the same application. As long as the 2D and 3D do merge together in a federated model and allow you to make good informed design decisions, then that is what you're trying to achieve at the moment. It's all about, though, the information exchange. So making sure that your standards, your protocols are in place and everyone knows what they're doing, so that data can be exchanged easily and freely without a lot of problem. Because fundamentally what we're talking about here is not how you deliver the end product, it's what you deliver. Because fundamentally you're asked by the client or the design team to deliver a certain feature or product or design at a certain point in a certain format. How you go about achieving that is your choice. What they want is a certain deliverable that's been defined. So it's not about the how, that's your choice. It's about the what you need to deliver and by when that's important. When we often talk about a design process, where we are generally at the moment is that we tend to all work in our own environment, and then we publish that data to the next level, but we dumb it down. So we might have a very survey-rich model which has got contours, elevations, points all over at certain elevations. We've got a 3D model, but then we send somebody a survey drawing which has all been squashed to the ground. Somebody's then got to pick that data up and start turning it into a 3D model, which obviously is time, it's money, it adds potential for errors. You then build that model up to your sort of level, and then you produce it to somebody else, and often it's ostensibly a PDF. So people can't actually physically pick on features, interrogate them, understand what they are. So again, they've got to go from the process of getting a PDF and taking that up, developing that into their model, which again adds cost because they've got to interpret, they've got to redesign, and it adds the ability or the potential to include errors. So what we're trying to do with each of those stages is to iron out those processes. So we're trying to say that actually what we're trying to do is package the data in a way that can be passed on, where we're minimising that lost time and data, and we're minimising the chance of errors occurring in the design process. The way I often think about it is when I buy a car, I don't need to know absolutely everything about that car. What I can do is go and buy a manual, a Haynes car manual. I can open that car manual book up, and I can start flicking through, and I can find something about the engine, and I can look at the text description, I can look at photographs, I can look at elevations and 3D drawings to show me how things fit together, how they work, how they connect. And then at the back of that section, the back of the book, there's a specification that goes with it. So I know exactly what the part is and what I need to do to specify to get that replacement part. And that's fundamentally what you're trying to do. You're trying to get all this disparate information together, use your expertise, knowledge and ability to process that, interpret that, but package it in a way that other people can pick that up straight away and start making informed decisions about your processes and your design intent. Equally, you want to ask that of your sort of design partners and even your clients. Because if you're not getting that information in that format, it means that there's downtime, there's lost time, there's a potential for errors. So you're trying to produce effectively your own BIM sort of car sort of manual, owner's manual, to deliver to people in the design chain. And what we're trying to do in that process is often what we refer to is lean design and construction. Lean is something that is very much a part of the manufacturing world, whereby it's all just-in-time management. So you don't have too much information or too much stock to stockpile. You just have enough information and sort of materials and products to do what you need to do at the time you need to do it. That avoids all the stockpiling, all the waste that goes with that, so that the manufacturing process is as seamless as possible. And that's what we're trying to do in the construction process. So we're trying to not over-deliver, not under-deliver, give the right information at the right time, packaged together so people can make good informed decisions about the intent of the project and the operations of that project moving forward. That car paints manual. Most of that doesn't actually require software or anything. It just needs a rethink and a sort of a process change, both internally and externally. So how you engage with your sort of consultants and how you engage with your clients and your design partners. So it is a sort of an opportunity to rethink your systems, repackage your systems, and that's not something that's new. Most of you have probably moved to where you are now by developing new systems, new processes, working arrangements with clients and design partners to get where you are today using CAD and other systems. All this is doing is taking it to another level and looking at the whole data exchange process further. So it's trying to hone that down and get a consistency in that whole design process. One of the fundamental things we're talking about is information exchange. That's the CAD and everything else that goes with it. The government actually defined a particular deliverable, which is COBE, Construction Operations Building Information Exchange, is an acronym. The acronym COBE stands for. Basically, it's a data set. It's a whole range of information that covers the information about the project, its name, the client, the partners involved with that, and then links down to the products, the suppliers, and defines information about that, where it is in the project, and information about it, the specification. So it gives you all that information. So if you hand that to a facilities manager, they can quite quickly get hold of that, find a certain feature in the project, go to that element in the project through via links and connections to either websites or within the document or even to other documents, and then re-specify that product or know who to go to as a supplier to get that product, or even the contractor to re-deliver that as a change or a modification request. It's all about adding that data up to the facilities managers so they can make better design decisions about when they want to replace things as well. It does exclude any geometry, so it is just about the data, and it's got placeholders to say this is sort of, it could be sort of plot 1, plot 2, but it doesn't actually say where plot 1 and plot 2 is in the actual, as a graphical representation. We'll talk a little bit about COBE a bit further on, because what we are finding, people aren't necessarily delivering and requesting COBE, but it may be asked of you if you do get engaged in a government-funded project. As I said, when we had a focus group in March this year, we invited a select group of organisations that are representative of sort of multinationals, local authorities, membership agencies, and small, medium practices, but working mainly landscape and the traffic management side. And what we came across from that discussion was certain points, 5 certain points that were raised. Whilst we do talk about it not being software, software compatibility was the issue. That doesn't mean that everyone's got to buy a particular bit of software, but this is about really understanding your protocols, your design intent, and your formats of exchange, and making sure that it's delivered at that level, and making sure that the data that is required is delivered within that format. And that seems to be the biggest issue. So people are maybe producing things in different environments and exporting to a drawing format, a DWG format. But because of their software taking out data, compressing data, not transferring the data, not all of that comes across, or it comes across in a format that isn't immediately usable. So it's understanding and refining those processes that is more of an issue rather than software per se. Some clarity that as probably all of you that's been researching BIM, there's a lot of information out there about BIM and what it means. Some think it is software, go and buy a piece of software, you're BIM compliant. Some talk about processes. So there's a lot of confusion out there. And one of the things that was talked about is how do we sort of get some clarity about that. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And how we start going about getting training. Again, that will come from what we talk about later. There was discussion about how BIM will be measured and how it will be policed. There aren't any BIM police out there, not that I know of anyway. But fundamentally, it will be self-policed. It will be policed by either pre-tender qualification questions and demonstration of your ability to fulfill the requirements of the contract. It will also be judged on your ability to deliver. If you say you're BIM Level 2 compliant and you don't deliver that, the chances are you won't get commissioned again. So the client and the design team are going to effectively self-police this purely by their needs and their desires and their wants over time. As we mentioned just a second ago, there was this question about the value of COBE as a deliverable. Anybody that's trying to use COBE, it's not the most user-friendly. It can be edited in a spreadsheet, but they are linked to tabs, and it can be quite difficult just to pick up and start running with. What we are finding increasingly is that the client or the client's agent or the operations managers are requesting information in a format that fits into their system rather than delivering COBE, because then they've got to work out a process that gets COBE into their system. So in most cases, the actual deliverable in terms of what the operations managers need won't necessarily be COBE, it will be something defined by the client. It may be, as I said, on government projects, that is a requirement of the output, and that's something you'd have to consider with you as part of your design team. I think the biggest sort of thing that came out of the discussions really was this idea that if you've got to start with the end in mind. If you don't know what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to deliver and by when, how can you understand how you're going to get there? Again, it's about what I said earlier. It's about what you've got to deliver and by when, not how. Once you know what you've got to deliver and in what format and by when, then you start stepping back and saying, right, how do we as an organisation and as a design team deliver that? And then you start putting together processes, procedures, protocols, standards, and you may even specify formats of exchange that pull together into how you're going to sort of deliver that to the client. And typically that will be a single model which pulls that all together. So unless you start with what you want to deliver, and again, part of that is understanding what the client wants and what the operations managers want. There's no point in, if the operations manager needs very detailed information about the electrics about the building, there's no point in providing every extensive information about the water, the gas, all the other facilities, and undermine the actual delivery because you haven't got time of all the electrical information. So think about what you need and delivering that as a priority, the other things then fall into place. So as a basis of that focus group, what we've tasked ourselves to do, and I'll talk a little bit about this again before we finish, is we put together a BIM guide, which is just an understanding of what you need to do and think about to deliver BIM. There's a lot of acronyms out there. We talked about COBE and BIM, and there'll be other ones as well that come through. So we put a jargon buster together, just a brief explanation of some of the key phrases and words that will help you sort of go through that sort of BIM process. And then we're putting together a BIM checklist, which hopefully will be available in the next few days, which is just literally a, I need this on a project, has it been done? I need this on a project, has it been done? To some degree, the BIM toolkit, which is available online, so you can search for the BIM toolkit, which is produced by the MBS, does offer you some element of that because it sets up the roles, responsibilities, when they've got to be delivered by as part of that process. But this is a very quick, simple way of sort of managing a BIM process through a very simple tick box checklist. So how do you start preparing for BIM? I think fundamentally the important thing is develop a BIM implementation plan. That is your action plan to deliver BIM within your organisation. It should map to your business plan. So what are your aspirations, your goals, your desires for your business now and in the future, and what clients do you want to work with now and in the future? Because it means basically what you're looking to do is if people are using certain software, certain processes, certain features, you need to start working towards that now to engage with them in the near future. But if that is going to divert you away from your overall business plan, then you have to make decisions about what is it, are we going to do this? Is it diverting us away from where we want to be? It might well be, it might be a good change in direction, it may be detrimental. That's a choice you've got to make. But what you've got to do is be quite bold and say, right, to us, this is what BIM means, and we're going to get there over the next 3 to 5 years. We're putting in place these processes and these stages so that we're moving, we're setting milestones and goals. So we say, right, we've achieved that in year 1, in year 2 we're going to achieve this. And you can start putting investments in place and start thinking about, on each project, moving further and closer towards your end game. So if one of the systems or one of the things you've got to do is introduce better infrastructure, internal infrastructure, the next time you're looking to roll out new PCs, new processes internally, you can say, well, actually, let's look at that in terms of what we need to deliver from our BIM implementation plan. So you start moving on each phase and each element towards your end game. That's what you can do, but also there is what is often referred to the BIM Execution Plan. So when you first engage on a project, the client will have a requirement, often referred to as the employer's information requirement. And the employer's information requirement sets out clearly what the client wants and what they want to deliver and what information they need you to prepare and produce to enable them to manage that facility in the future. It's effective. So once that information plan is delivered, the project team then sit down and say, right, how are we going to deliver that to the client in the format that they require and with the information they require? And that is set out then in what's called the BIM Execution Plan. And that effectively defines what BIM means on this project. And on some projects, that BIM might actually involve having to use Austere Civil. It might require you to use Revit. It might require you to use MicroStation. So depending on the nature of the project, it could require you to use any piece of software, any set of systems, standards, BSs, etc., relevant to that client. So the execution plan defines what BIM means for the project, and it will be different for every single project, because not every single project is going to be identical, and not every client's requirement is going to be identical. So it defines what BIM means, and what you're trying to do is with each project you get engaged with, and as each process goes through, you're trying to look at adding your BIM win, your next step on the BIM implementation plan with each of the projects you engage with. So if we look at that as a very simple diagram, what we're trying to say is that your BIM implementation plan is being progressed, a bit like it's going up a step ladders. With each project you engage with, you're looking for a new BIM win. Don't try and start today, I'm not BIM compliant, tomorrow I am BIM compliant. It's not like a light switch you can turn on and off. You are looking at a process over time to go from where you are now to where you want to be in the future. So your BIM implementation plan does that, and each project you try to move further along that BIM implementation plan. So with each project you're gaining knowledge, you're gaining processes that move you towards your end game. Within each project itself, you'll have the BIM execution plan, and that defines BIM across the project, depending on the different people that are engaged with it. Because obviously, all different contractors have different requirements, different engineers have different requirements, different building architects have different requirements. So with each project, you'll have different definitions of BIM and requirements on that. So that's what we're trying to do. We have our project BIM, which is your BIM execution plan, and your ongoing development, which is your BIM implementation plan. When we start talking about how do I prepare for BIM, it's really, as I said, it's your BIM implementation plan. It's for you to define. And I went to a presentation a couple of months ago, and Richard Lane was there from the BIM task group. And he summed it up very well, I thought. When we start talking about BIM, we know we need to get fit. When we talk about getting fit, we all know that exercise is good for us. And sport at some level, whether that's walking, etc., is good for us. But some of us don't engage. We come home and just sit down and watch the television every night. We know we should do it, but we don't. Some of us engage to be low level. We might go for a walk once or twice a week. Some of us might take up active sports and now be involved with boxing, cycling, running. Sometimes that's alone. That's your lonely BIM on your own. Sometimes it's part of a team. And sometimes you might be with different teams and different people, depending on what you're trying to do. So it might well be that with one person, you like to play squash. With another person, it's playing badminton. So, and each project you engage with, it's going to be different. And some people are going to be good at the sport, and some are going to be absolutely fantastic and gold medalists. And that's what you're trying to look at. It's going to be completely different. You're getting fit for BIM. It's going to be completely different for you and the people you engage with than somebody else. Because like sport, to get fit, you have different levels, different ways, and different interactions that get you fit over time. What are your next steps? I mentioned the BIM implementation plan. Your next steps really are to talk to your clients, understand what they're trying to achieve, where they're going over the next few months, years, etc. What your design partners are looking to do, where are they, what are they looking to achieve, what are they trying to deliver over the next few years. If everyone's trying to deliver 3D, it makes sense that you can deliver 3D. If everyone's using 3D in a certain environment, it makes sense that you start working towards being able to deliver that in that environment. Also look at your business plan. Talk to your employees. Look at your goals, your ambitions for the company, your aspirations for your own company. What type of projects do you want to be involved with? What skills base have you got internally? What do you and your employees want to achieve? What work do you want to be working on? That will help you define the type of projects you want to engage with, and therefore identify what you need to put in place to enable you to engage with that in the future. Obviously, when you start looking at that, there's going to be a skill shortage, a gap in that process, and then you start looking at how you fill that. One of the easy ways could be to invest in internal training. It could be you've got to buy in services or buy in new personnel to fit those gaps in your sort of strategy. I think the important thing is to set meaningful, realistic goals. So as I said, think about a 3 to 5 year strategy rather than by the 1st of January 2016, I'm going to be level 2 BIM compliant. Get into place processes and protocols that enable you to be able to engage with people to be BIM level 2 compliant, but then move on from that and start saying, what are my next steps, my next goals, and set realistic goals and targets that you know you can achieve, and that can be done with each project that you go through. And identify suitable projects to do that, because it might well be that certain projects will fit certain elements in your BIM implementation plan that you might have to bring forward compared to other projects, or you might seek out certain projects to implement a certain strategy, process, or use of a particular software. So what that fits together to is your BIM Implementation Plan that enables you to present what BIM means to you, engage with clients and customers and design partners. So, right, when we engage with BIM, this is what it means. This is what we expect from you. This is what you can expect from us. And put that together in almost a document that you can be proud of and talk to people about. And it opens up dialogue and discussion. And as part of that, your implementation plan might evolve and change. And over time, you'll get to a certain point where you'll be implementing BIM Level 2 without thinking about it, but refining those processes ongoing and forever. We talked about Level 3. The jump from Level 1 to Level 2 is a big jump in terms of getting things right, getting your house in order. The jump to Level 3 is going to be even more significant, and unless you start looking at it now and getting your systems in place and processes in place and working with your clients and design partners more, getting that collaboration going now, if you don't do it now, it's going to be harder to jump to Level 3. And what you'll find is you'll probably start refining these processes, so that when Level 3 comes, you're just moving up to another level in that process there. Where are key soft solutions in that process? Well, obviously we talked about 2D. We're actually delivering 2D on nearly all our software, that's relevant to design-based elements. We can produce schedules that can export to Excel. That can be copied and pasted into COBE or fit into most operations management software. Because it's the environment of 3D and AutoCAD, you can produce 3D quite easily. But we are aware that we want to improve that process. So we've got a whole schedule of development over the next few months to improve the 3D elements of all our software, enabling it to work better in 2D and visualize that in 3D with a lot more data-rich information behind that, and looking at export of that so people can pick that up and start working with it straight away. So what we talked about over the last sort of half an hour is what BIM is, the definition of what BIM is, how you can engage with BIM at different levels. We talked about the results of our focus group and how we're sort of going to sort of prepare information to help support you as a consequence of those outcomes. But also looking at how you prepare your BIM strategy moving forward. That's your BIM Implementation Plan and the BIM Execution Plan. I hope that's given you an insight into what BIM is, and through all that I didn't talk too much about software, so if anybody says what software do I need to buy to be BIM compliant, I haven't done my job well. Hopefully you'll understand where we are with things now. If you want any more information on BIM and you want to download those guides and jargon busters, the checklist will be available hopefully next week. If you go to keysoftSolutions.com/BIM, that should direct you to a page where you can find a lot more information out about that. There is also a lot of information available on Building Smart website, on BIM Talk website, and the Institute websites have got a lot of information about BIM, particularly the Landscape Institute, which I'm part of. We've put a lot of information on there, of guidance notes, etc., and data that help you ask the right questions and think about BIM as a process. Thank you for attending today's event. I hope it's been useful and given you insight into what BIM is and what you need to do over the next few months and few years to move on your BIM journey. And I hope this is just the start of where your BIM journey sort of begins, and we can work with you to develop that over time. Thank you.